you can see how everything looks now, all connected and ready to go. Hey everyone, Digital David here. Today on this episode of Newegg Now, I'm going to be building a test bench PC using the Cooler Master MasterFrame 700. This episode is sponsored by Newegg, and Cooler Master did send me some great products to use in this build, but I want you guys to know that any opinion expressed in this video, or any video for that matter, is strictly my own. That being said, if you're interested in any of the products you see here, the links will be in the video description. Now let's go ahead, let's look at our build list. So all the parts and components are readily available on Newegg minus the GPU, but maybe you'll have success winning a shuffle. So without a GPU, our build total comes in right under $1,000, and you can see the nice breakdown right here for all the parts and components of this build. So first up, we have the MasterFrame 700 custom test bench right here. So you can use it as a test bench or an open air case. It's got two different configurations, which is really, really cool. And it's VESA mount compatible. So you could mount this to a wall if you want, or something along those lines. Next up, you can see for $100, we're using the Corsair Vengeance 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. I just had that laying around, so that's what we're going to use for this test bench build. That's going to be perfect. Next up, you can see we have an 850 watt Cooler Master power supply. Very happy with that. Then you can see we have this random Samsung 256 gigabyte SSD. This is going to be perfect for my test bench. Again, I just have an extra one laying around. Following that up with our Cooler Master Hyper H412R compact CPU air cooler. That's what we'll be using to cool our CPU, which we'll find out what that is in just a second. Next up, I have an extra Lexar 2.5 inch 240 gigabyte SSD lying around that we're going to use as well. And we're using the MSI Z590A Pro motherboard. They have multiple options of this board available, so find the one that fits your budget. Or if it's not the right one for you, there's plenty of other motherboards you can choose from. I really just like MSI boards, and for my particular needs, this one was the board that I was most interested in. Next up, you can see the CPU we're using right here is the i5-11400. This has an F variant as well if you don't want the integrated graphics. But at the time of this video, I believe the F variant cost even more money than the integrated graphics. And if you can't get a hold of a GPU, this is going to be the way to go. For my particular build, we'll be using the F variant and an RTX 3060. Now let's go ahead, let's get our test bench built. So the first thing we're going to do is prep the motherboard and get the CPU installed. You can see we have our RAM already installed, our M.2 drive, and now it's time to install the CPU. So we're going to leave that cover on, and we're just going to gently open it back up like so. And we're going to take our CPU out right here. And we're going to make sure everything's lined up. We have a little tiny golden triangle right there in the bottom left-hand corner if you're reading what's on the CPU. And we have what I call a Pac-Man icon right here. So we're just going to very gently set the CPU in place like so. And now we're going to come back here with our fancy-pantsy cover. And you can see, there we go. Everything has successfully been installed right there. The cover came off just fine, and it's that simple, guys. There you go. The CPU has successfully been installed. So to get the cooler installed, you can see the first step we have to do is attach our bracket to the cooler. So you can see we got one side attached right here, and we can make adjustments depending on the socket that we're using for our build. You can adjust those between 3 different places. So repeat the same thing on the other side. Basically, we're going to take this, just gently press it in place. The holes will align. We'll take our screw, we'll drop it in there, and we'll tighten it in place. Now that that has successfully been installed, we're ready to go on to the next step, which is to line up our back bracket. Again, we have 3 different positions that will correspond and match with the positions that you have for the screws themselves. You can see clearly marked Intel for us and how everything's going to look, but I'll show you guys what we did. So we took this piece right here, we just gently dropped it in place, and then we have our bracket that lines up with it. And then we just press both together, it snaps right in, and now we can freely move that about between the 3 positions. So there's the first position, the second one, which is what we're going to use, and then the third one. And you can adjust that as desired. So now that that's completed, we can go ahead, we can line it up with our motherboard and just gently slot it through the holes. So check that out. You can see It is through the holes and ready to go. So now we're ready to take our cooler. We can peel this plastic off. Definitely do that before you apply your thermal paste. And then you can get a feel, just do a quick little dry fit. Okay, in this case, we have our fan connector coming out here. And we have our fan that's connected, showing the airflow up and in. So we're gonna want it to go just like this and drop in place. So we will tighten it down just like you see here. And that's how it's gonna be installed on our motherboard. So the next step is just to apply our thermal paste to our CPU. And then we're gonna tighten it in place. So probably too much thermal paste still. I thought they had a nice pre-applied amount, which they should. I didn't want to use it all, though. That's going to be plenty for what we're doing. Just a pea size will be great. And now line it up on all sides. And then just very gently tighten everything in place. So there you go. You can see the cooler has successfully been installed. We did have to remove the fan to get easy access to those screws. And I want to point out, it's best to go corner to corner or in some sort of clockwise pattern or counterclockwise pattern to alleviate the pressure. Don't just tighten one corner down all the way and then go to the next one. Just do a turn or half a turn at a time and jump between them to fasten it in place. Now we can go ahead, we can clip the fan back on. Just like so. And there we go. Everything has been installed. Now we're ready to plug it in and power it on. Now it's time to get our motherboard installed on our case. So you can see we have all of our standoff brackets in the proper position thanks to this chart and key. If you're using a more traditional case, now is the time you're going to want to snap in your IO shield for your motherboard before you put your board on and in the case. Make sure at that stage too that none of the tabs or anything are misaligned or nothing is being blocked or anything along those lines. Now is the time to make those proper corrections to make sure that everything is all set and ready to go. So we'll take our board. Pay attention to, as I flip it around, you can see we have a couple of no-go zones, keep out zones right there. So make sure you have your standoff brackets lined up accordingly. And then we're just gonna gently place it on. Very easy with this test bench case, as you guys can see. And once everything's lined up, we're ready to take our Phillips head screwdriver and the included Phillips head screws with our case and fasten everything in place. Now that our board's firmly fastened in place, it's time to install our power supply unit. We're gonna use one of the two included brackets. We're just gonna go ahead, we're gonna take that bracket just like you see here, and we're gonna place it on our power supply. So check that out. It's going to follow suit with those 4 screws. So we're going to use those 4 screws that came with our power supply and tighten the bracket in place. So there you go. You can see we have the bracket installed here. Now we're going to go ahead. We're going to slide it in place and fasten it with 4 screws. You can see right here from the bottom through to the top. And you can see the PSUs clearly marked right here for us. So that's going to be where those 2 side screws go. So our power supply is successfully installed. Now let's go ahead, before we connect all of our cables, let's take our GPU and let's get that installed as well. So we're just going to line it up and just gently press it in place. It's going to snap right in, and we can take some additional screws and fasten that securely right here. Once that's fastened down, we'll be ready to connect all of our cables. So now we have the cables all lined up and ready to go to connect to our motherboard. Let's go ahead, let's connect them and go over each connection. So the first connection we made was our HD audio connection. It only goes in one way, so pay attention to the missing pin. Next up, you can see we connected our power button. So it goes power LED plus, then minus, and then our power SW. Again, it only will go one way. You can see we have that missing pin there, so just use that as your reference point for power SW. Then we have our power LED minus and then plus at the end. Up top, we got our PCIe power for our RTX 3060. Then you can see we have USB Type-C, USB 3.0, and our main power for the board right there. Coming around to this side, you can see we have our CPU fan and we have our CPU power right there. Obviously, if we had some RGB, we could install that, or additional fans. Plenty of room on this board, but you can see how everything looks now, all connected and ready to go. To mount our SSD, we're going to use the included thumb screws that came with our test bench case. and we're going to locate the SSD bracket right here, which is along the side. We're actually going to mount this diagonally up and underneath, so we're going to point our connectors down so we have easy access to get to them. So we're going to take our thumb screw, we're going to line it up on the side right here, and we're going to gently tighten in place. And then we're going to find the other hole and do the same thing. Just tighten it like you see right here. So there we go. We just successfully installed our SSD. Now let's go ahead and connect it to our motherboard. So the drive's all connected now. We have our SATA cable plugged into the SATA 1 port, and you can see the remnants right here of our power cable. We have that plugged into the drive, so everything is all set up and ready to go. So here we go. Everything's all set up and ready to go, besides some cable management if we want to do it. And this is going to be used as an actual test bench, so I'm not planning on keeping anything really tied down here. We'll be swapping out parts and components all the time. So for me, this is good enough. Now we're ready to power it on and try it out. So check it out. Here we go. The PC posted on first attempt, which is always a good feeling. And you can see we're in the MSI BIOS settings. Keep in mind, at this step, you may want to tweak your memory profiles, enable XMP, so then you can adjust the speeds for your RAM. Other than that, you can tidy up your cables if you want. You can download Windows, and you're all set and ready to go. Well, that concludes our video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget the product link will be in our video description below. Please go ahead, check it out, and do your shopping from there. Any purchase made through that link helps support our channel at no additional cost to you. So we're really grateful and thankful for all of your support. While you're at it, can you go ahead and hit that like button for us? And subscribe to our channel. We have new content coming out daily, and we don't want you to miss anything. Please go ahead and give us a follow online and make it a clean sweep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. You can message us on WeChat, check out our website, and join our free newsletter. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget, new content daily, and we can't wait to see you in our next video.